Hey everybody, hope all is well. So we're on the Indisputable Truth book series. We're going through this amazing book called Indisputable Truth, and we covered a lot of sections already. We covered, how do we know God exists, disproving other religions. Now we're finally on the section. We proved how there must be God gave an oral Torah and a written Torah. He gave two Torahs to the Jewish people, the written law and the oral law that explains how to keep all the commandments. And we gave proofs for that. And now we're finally on the section, which is like the main idea number 2 of the book, is proving that the Torah is from God. Whole section just going on that topic of how do you know that the Torah is from God. So let's start the section. In the third edition of the book, it's on page 35. So the section called Compelling Evidence That God Gave the Torah. Okay, so we say, how can we really know if the Jews received the book from God? Is there any evidence that supports this claim? As we said before, we can assume a religion is not God-given and therefore man-made, if there are mistakes in the religion's books, because an omnipotent God does not make any mistakes. And if he did make any mistakes, he would not be considered omnipotent. Meaning our goal right now is we're trying to figure out, how do we know that the Torah, which is the books of the instruction manual of the Jewish people, right, the divine document that the Jews claim they got from God. Meaning, how do we know Judaism is true? And when I say Judaism, I'm talking about Torah Judaism. I'm not talking about any other forms of Judaism which basically didn't exist. I'm talking about the same Torah Judaism that God gave to Moses. Okay, so no reform, no conservative, no reconstructionist, and again, even or the closest form to meaning that not the closest form, the exact form of Judaism that's passed down today, that's basically how it's been for thousands of years, is Orthodox Judaism. The word Orthodox means, it's actually the Reform and Conservative made up that word. There was no such thing as Orthodox, conservative, Reform. It was just you're either religious or you're not religious. So people were called religious, observant, who kept the Torah and mitzvot and believed the principles of faith, were called Orthodox. And people who don't, they call themselves some other type of label, either traditional, non-observant, whatever it is. But the idea is obviously everyone's a Jew at the end of the day, and the whole goal is getting close to Hashem, observing the Torah and mitzvot, fulfilling the purpose of life. So now we're trying to figure out, how do we know the Torah, which I told you consists of multiple things, which consists of the 5 books of Moses, the entire prophets, Nevi'im, Joshua, Samuel, Judges, Kings, Isaiah, Jeremiah, right, Ezekiel, Obadiah, right, all those books, Psalms, Proverbs, Song of Songs, Lamentations, Esther, the book, all these, that's called the Tanakh, right, the written Torah. And we said the oral Torah is, the which was the oral explanation of how to keep all the commandments. But the oral explanation on how to keep, all the commandments, plus all the ethical teachings, everything you could think of, philosophies, which nowadays, it was used to be oral and got written down as the Mishnah, the Gemara, which is the Talmud, the Midrash, the Kabbalah, the Zohar, right? That's the entire oral Torah got written down. Okay, so it's not so oral anymore. It's also considered, in a sense, written, but we still call it oral Torah because really the main way of learning it is studying with a partner, and not just reading the text, but tapping into the tradition of learning with somebody who learned from his rabbi all the way to the ultimate rabbi, Moses, right? Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Rabbi. So the idea is we're trying to figure out, how do we know the written and oral Torah? Meaning, I'm just going to call it Torah, but when I mean Torah, I'm talking about the 5 books, like the Tanakh, the 5 books of Moses, right? The Jewish Bible, which we call it whatever, and if you want to say it in English, and then the oral Torah, right? The Talmud and everything else. So when I say Torah, just understand that's what I'm saying. But the idea is, how do we know the Torah, the written and oral, is from God? Again, if God, gave a book and there's mistakes in the book, if someone claimed that they got a book, or their religion is from God, and you see that their book that they claim God gave them has mistakes or contradictions, it can't be, because God's omnipotent, He's all powerful. God will never, make such dumb mistakes like that, right? He could do anything. He's all knowing, He's all powerful, right? So He's not. If you see a book that has mistakes in it, it's probably not from God, and it's probably from a human being. Okay. Now, on the other hand, we can have very compelling evidence that a religion is given from God if the religion's book contains information that only God could have known at the time it was given. So if you see a book and the book is making crazy predictions, like for example, let's say the book was written thousands of years ago and it predicted 9/11, Osama bin Laden, the Twin Towers, all this stuff. It predicted the Holocaust. It predicted, COVID and all, who's going to win the presidency and whatever. By the way, all this stuff I'm telling you, the Torah has, proofs on all these topics, right? Of codes and whatever in the Torah that talk about these events. But I'm saying crazy events or crazy situations or crazy scientific facts that no way someone could have known thousands of years ago, and only the creator of the universe can know such a thing, right? Just you could see through logic. Then you know that there's the only way that religion, it must be that whatever that is that it came from, it must have a divine source. It must be from the creator of the universe, because only the creator of the universe can know that. So in the upcoming sections, we will present you with compelling evidence that the Torah is divine. What does the word divine mean? Right? It says divinity of Torah. Compelling evidence for divinity of Torah. What does that mean, divine? Meaning it was given from God alone and that it could not have been made up by humans. That's what divine means. So now the book goes through a lot of different types of proofs, categories of proofs. Astronomy, biology, prophecy, psychology, so many different types of proofs, okay? We're starting with astronomy. So let's go with astronomy. Proof number 1. So the renewal of the moon. It says that the Jewish so we know that the Jewish calendar is based on the cycle of the moon. Therefore, the Jewish holidays, for example, Passover, Yom Kippur, etc., right, are extremely dependent on the exact day we classify the new moon, which is the first day of the Jewish month, which we call Rosh Chodesh in Hebrew, the beginning of the month, of the Jewish month. Okay? The new moon is the period of time in the beginning of the month. The new moon is the period of time in the beginning of the month where the lunar disk of the moon is not visible to the unaided eye. In the times of the Sanhedrin, the great Jewish court, 2 witnesses will go to the court and testify that they have seen a new moon. Once the witnesses were interrogated by the judges, the Jewish court would declare the new moon at the start of the month. So again, if you see the picture right here, at the beginning of the month, you basically see no moon. I know it's backwards here. There's no moon, so you would see this at the beginning of the month, nothing, right? So every first of the Jewish month goes by the lunar and solar calendar, but especially the months go by the lunar, right? You would see that it's a pitch black, meaning if you look at the sun, at the sky at night, you would see no moon, and then 15 days later you get a full moon, right? It would build up until a full moon, and then 15 days later it would go back to the new moon, right? So it's a whole cycle, with the 15th of the month always being a full moon, and that's why a lot of holidays you look up in the sky. It's on the 15th of the month, right? So the idea is what? The idea is that they had a whole system of, determining what the new moon is. And as more, again, back then they'd look outside, they'd see 2 people testify. Obviously it wasn't only 2 people, it was thousands of people would come testify, right? And they would interrogate and figure it out and fine, Now, the Talmud says, and again, when I say we're trying to prove the divinity of Torah, we're trying to also prove the oral Torah, meaning the 5 books of Moses, and the oral Torah. So we're going to be bringing proofs from the Talmud also to prove that no way the Talmud is some just man-made information. It's also given from God. The information that stands within it is from God. So the Talmud says that on one cloudy day, witnesses came to the head of the Jewish court, and whose name was Rabbi Gamliel, to testify about the renewal of the moon. He was sitting in his court, and the witnesses told him that right now is the renewal of the moon. Rabban Gamliel, the head of the court, replied to the people, "I'm very sorry, but all of you are wrong." So they asked him, "How can we all be wrong?" He told them, "We have basically a 1300-year-old tradition." Okay, so from his time, that was 13. So the Talmud was written 2,000 years ago, about 2,000 years ago. I mean, not the Talmud. This story happened 2,000 years ago. So when he said it, he said we have basically a 1,300-year-old tradition, meaning a tradition that he got all the way from his ancestors. So that would make it like a 3,300-year-old tradition. Okay. So this is how long the calculation that he claims that the Jews got from God, in a sense. So we have a calculation method to determine the renewal of the moon that we receive from generation to generation, all the way from Moses, who received it from God, where God tells us that the renewal of the moon can never be less than 29 days and a half, plus 2/3 of an hour, plus 73 of the 1,080 subsections, chalakim of an hour. Okay, so 73 subsections of an hour. It says this in the Talmud Bavli, right? The Talmud that discusses the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, page 25a. So if we calculate that number, right, 22. So it says the renewal of the moon, meaning how long is the lunar month? It's not exactly 30 days. It's every 29 point. It says 29 and a half days plus 2,000 hours plus 73 subsections of an hour. Okay, so what does that mean? If we calculate that, let's calculate 29 days and a half, which is 12 hours, plus 2/3 of an hour, which is 40 minutes, plus 73 divided by 1080 parts of an hour, okay, which gives you 0.066759 hours, okay? Add up, what does that add up to? 29.53059. Meaning the Jews, if you asked a Jew back then, thousands of years ago, what's the renewal of the moon? How long is the lunar month? They'll tell you 29.53059 days, okay, per month. Now that's the calculation of the Torah. Meaning that this is the calculation they claim, the Jews claim, because why do the Jews claim this calculations from God? Because they say in our religion, because it's very heavily dependent on the holidays, and it makes a big deal when you determine when the beginning of the month is. For example, if you're off and you say, it's really a 32-day month or 33-day off, or you miss the renewal of the moon and you don't count it exactly at the first of the month, then all the holidays you're going to be keeping. For example, Yom Kippur, right? You're going to be keeping it one day earlier, one day later. And that's a problem because you're going to be fasting on a day they don't have to fast. And you're going to be, on a day you should be fasting, you're going to be eating. And that's a problematic. You can't, or for example, Pesach, right? You can't eat chametz, you can't eat bread, leavened products. So if you calculate the renewal of the moon, and you're off on the day of the renewal of the moon, what's going to happen? You're also going to be off. You're going to be eating chametz, which we call leavened products, before Passover even starts. And when Passover, it's going to end one day earlier, for example, and you're going to you're going to you're going to keep it late, and you're going to be eating chametz when we're not supposed to, and when you are supposed to keep it, you're not going to be doing it. Basically, the whole holiday is going to shift, and you're not going to be able to keep any of the holidays, right? Yom Kippur, Shabbat, everything. So the idea is what? So now that's the calculation of the Torah, 29.5359. So that's why it's very, very important to have the exact time so we could calculate it and know exactly when the month starts. So we have all the holidays in the right time. So now let's review what the scientific world has to say about the minimum cycle of the moon. So it says, according to their research and measurements in the Earth-Moon system cycle, NASA published a calculation to be what? 29.53059 days. NASA works with satellites, thousands of employees, and a $20 billion budget. They came to a brilliant calculation that is exactly the same number as the same number within the Torah. Now there's a website called earthsky.org. It gives its own calculation, and it is also the same exact number. It gives 29.53059 days. Okay, so if you go on if you want to search on Google, make a Google search, how long is the lunar month? It will give you the exact number, right? Again, this is backwards, but you could see it here. Okay. So now the Torah was given a long, long time ago. Roughly 3,300 years ago is when God gave Moses all these commandments. And again, we need to know when the renewal of the moon is because our whole holidays, everything depends on that in our religion. So God needs to give this calculation to Moses. So we had it 3,300 years ago. Now, when the Torah was given, they had no technology, no satellites, no mega computers, and no way to measure these complex calculations. Moreover, do you think anybody was able to even dream about writing a number with five digits after the decimal point so long ago? There were not even digital calculators until 50 or 60 years ago. Who could have known such a brilliant calculation of the moon so long ago? Was a person able to write such a thing? The answer is absolutely not. Only the creator of the moon and its cycle could know this information. And the Jews received this precise calculation from God himself. Meaning what? We see from here an example from the Torah teaches us, something, right? And the Torah was given thousands of years ago. And we see from the fact that the Torah gives us certain information that there's no way that the Torah could have been made up by human beings. Because how can a human being come up with such a calculation 3,300 years ago before any type of technology that you could even to measure things, right? To measure these calculations. The idea is, you see from here that the Torah, it's a proof. Again, this is one of the many proofs, and I told you, like I said in the beginning, we'll see so many more proofs, and you have to look at them all collectively. But the idea is what? The idea is there's so much evidence, so much wisdom, so much knowledge to show you that there's no way the Torah could have been made up by a human being, and it could only have been given by the creator of the universe, who knows the renewal of the moon, who knows the exact month of the lunar cycle, who knows the 29.53059 days calculation. Okay. All right, so let's go to proof number 2. About the number of stars in the universe, okay? The next example is also from the Babylonian Talmud, which is again the oral Torah, which is again, that's the Torah. It speaks about the number of stars in the universe, okay? So if you look in the sky, go look in the sky right now, wherever you are in the world, most probably how many stars are you going to see? A couple thousand stars, maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe 7, maybe a few thousand, right? Now, as we know, until the year 1608, guys, you good? You listening? Good? Yeah? If you have any questions, always, let me know. Okay. So okay, perfect. Okay. As we know, until the year 1608, when Galileo Galilei came with his 6-foot wide telescope, the entire world believed that there were only around 6,000 to 8,000 stars in the entire world. Obviously, obviously they couldn't see more than that. So it made sense why they thought, there's max, 8,000 stars in the sky. They would simply stand on a tall mountain and try to count the number of stars. When Galileo raised his telescope for the first time, he discovered that there are many more stars that people could not see with their bare eyes. Now, when we review the Talmud, we find it something extraordinary. The Talmud brings a conversation between God and the Jewish people. So again, if you look in the sky with a telescope, you would see millions and billions of stars, right? So when we look in the Talmud, when we review the Talmud, we find it something extraordinary, a conversation between God and the Jewish people, meaning after the destruction of the Jewish temple by the Roman Empire, the Jewish people asked God why he neglected them by allowing the temple, the Bet HaMikdash, as we say in Hebrew, to be destroyed. God then replied to the Jewish people, and he used some type of Roman army terminology, again, just to describe the groupings of how many people. So don't get too lost in the terms, but just get the idea that it's groupings. God said to the Jewish people, and the quote here is from the Babylonian Talmud, Barachot, right? Page 32b. So God said to the Jews, so the Jews said, God, why'd you leave us? What's the problem? Why do you neglect us? God says to the Jews, you think I neglected you? He said to the Jews, I created 12 sections in the heaven. Okay, and we know there's 12 sections in the horoscope. And each section, I created 30 armies. And in each and every army, I created 30 legions. And in each legion, I created 30 ra'aton. And in each ra'aton, I created 30 karton. And in each karton, I created 30 gistera. And in each gistera, I hung 365,000 myriads, which means myriad is 10,000. So imagine 365,000 times 10,000 of stars. And all of that I created for your sake. And you said, God has forsaken me and God has forgotten me. Meaning God saying, I created all these stars in the universe. I know how many stars I have in the universe. You think I forgot about you guys? How many stars? There's billions of stars in the universe. You think I forgot even one Jew? Now, again, the Talmud is just telling us a story. But when you analyze the story, you see something really crazy, okay? Like I said, all the terminologies were Roman army terminology. So the groupings, kartan, ratan, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the understanding is there was groupings. So let's calculate, okay? Let's calculate together what it comes down to. So we get 12, right? 12 sections times. Okay, so I'm just going to say the number 12 times 30 times 30 times 30 times 30 times 30 times 365,000 times 10,000, because we said myriad equals 10,000. What number do we get? We get a gigantic number. Like, I don't even know how to say the number. It's 1.1. I don't even know how to say the number. 10643400000000000. Basically, which is a gigantic number, which is 10 to the 18th power. So 1 with basically 18 zeros if you round it, okay? Remember that this was written 1,108 years before the invention of the first telescope, okay? Let's see what the scientists have to say about the numbers of stars in the universe. Again, if the Torah is made up by human beings, again, humans didn't know how many stars were in the universe thousands of years ago. Until Galileo came out with his telescope, we knew, okay, there's millions of stars. But before this, thousands of years before this, no one knew how many stars. He thought there was thousands. But Judaism is telling us there's 10 to the 18th power. And obviously, stars are getting created and destroyed, right? But the idea is, at that time, whatever that could have been the calculation, God, and for now, could be a little bit different on and off because stars are beginning created and destroyed, and this was written 2,000 years ago. But the idea is what? Let's see. Let's see what scientists have to say about the number of stars in the universe. Nadine Barla, who is an astronomy department chair at the Northern Arizona University and the director of the NAU NASA space program, gave an estimate of 10 to the 19 stars in the universe. So one calculation we got from the scientists is 10 to the 19 stars. Additionally, Christopher Consilis, a professor of astrophysics at the University of Nottingham in the UK, gives an estimate of 10 to the 19 to 10 to the 20 stars in the universe, right? We have to note that all these are estimates because stars are constantly being created and destroyed. This is why it makes sense not to have the exact same number, because the Talmud gave this estimate of the number of stars about 1,520 years before scientists gave their estimates, and obviously the universe is expanding and more and stars are being created and destroyed all the time, right? So it's not going to be the exact same number, but it's incredible that so long ago, with no technology, the Torah was able to give such a relatively accurate estimate. Rationally speaking, could a person living 1,520 years ago be able to number the amount of stars? If the Torah was made up by people, then why such an intense risk that could someday be proven wrong? Again, this proves to be another example how we see that the Torah is God-given and could have never been made up by humans. We see from here that the idea, what do we see? That again, how NASA, just to get this calculation, they had supercomputers, super telescopes, lasers, everything. They had pictures of, they took pictures of the entire universe. They have satellites deep in outer space, right? And the idea is what? The idea is, yeah, it makes sense. If NASA got the number, I'm not shocked how NASA got the number. But if the Torah gave this number 2,000 years ago, before there was telescopes, before there was everything, and it was so accurate, imagine everybody at the time, you guys believe there's thousands of stars, billions of stars in the universe, but we only see 6,000. It says actually in the Torah that God told the Jews, you're going to be like the stars. If you do what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to number the stars in the universe. Okay. And the people and everybody, all the nations of the time were like, what? There's only 6,000, 8,000 stars in the universe. God cursed you guys. Right. But the Jewish people, again, even though they're at that time period, 2,000 years ago, there was no technology, no lasers, no whatever, but they said, no, there are more stars to the universe. There's billions of stars to the universe. And God, if we do what we're supposed to be doing, we're going to be number billions and millions. Obviously, the Torah also says if you don't do what you're supposed to be doing, you're not going to be as the stars in the universe. But that's why there's probably not so many, compared to the billions of other people out there, there's only, 15, 16 million Jews in the world, maybe 18 million, right? But the idea is what? The idea is that from day one, we knew how many stars in the universe. Why? Not because we're so smart, not because anything, because the creator of the universe told us. And obviously he said in the term of he was talking to the prophets, right? This is written. I think at the time he was talking to the prophet Isaiah, and whatever. The idea is what? The idea is that God told us this information, and this proves to what? To be another proof that the Torah is divine, that the indisputable truth of the Torah. Okay. Let's go to the next proof. Proof number 3. The protective shells of the sun. So let's start. We know that the temperature of the center of the sun is about 15 million degrees Celsius, and the temperature at the surface of the sun is 6,000 degrees Celsius. Today, scientists, by using highly sophisticated technology, are able to detect the shells around the sun. Meaning what? If you look at the sun has shells. It's like let's say like an onion. Yeah, you could say like an onion. An onion has layers. It has shells, right? Or like an orange. I mean, an orange doesn't really have a middle shell, but whatever. The idea is as follows. Yeah, that there's shells. So you have one layer and another layer outside, and another layer, another layer. Now the innermost depth of the sun is going to be the hottest layer, right? That's where there's basically nukes, nuclear reactions happening all the time in the middle of the sun. But the idea is what? The idea is that the more layers of the sun. So if you're in the middle layer, then you're the second layer, the third layer, fourth layer, fifth layer, whatever, that it's going to get less hot, right? So that's why the surface of the sun is 6,000 degrees Celsius instead of 15 million degrees, as opposed to the middle. So today, scientists, by using, so we said that. Yeah, so scientists, that's how they know the sun has layers, because they had technology. They were able to find it out. Now, when we review the oral Torah, and I told you the oral Torah consists of the Talmud, the Mishnah, and the Midrash. It says in the Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah, chapter 6, verse 6, that the orb of the sun has a cover. The Midrash then goes on to speak about a verse in Tehillim, in Psalms, chapter 19, verse 5, where it says, God put the sun inside a cover. The verse then goes on to say that it's like a groom, a chatan, going out from his wedding canopy. Right, meaning it's like the sun, when it travels, the rays of the sun, it's like there's a layer around it, and it travels through layers. Right, that's the whole idea. But the sun is inside a cover. The sun has shells, basically, has an orb, has a cover. The Torah tells us that this layer suppresses the heat of the sun in order to protect us from its deadliness. If you see Rashi on Malachi, right, Rashi talks about that. Now remember, when we look at the sun with the naked eye, you're on Earth. I was when I was driving to synagogue in the morning to shul, I saw the sun, and the sun was beautiful. You could literally look at the sun in the morning. I don't know what happened. Maybe there was clouds on top of it, but it looked like a big red blob. A circular red blob. It was ginormous. I think this is around sunrise, right? But the idea is I couldn't see layers in the sun. You could only see layers if you freaking have technology and you could see. But I was looking from just just on the street, and it looked like you know one just huge mass of fire right in the sky. Now, there's no way to see this. So if you look for with the naked eye, there's no way to see this. When we look at the sun with the naked eye, there's no way to see the sun has a cover, has a shell. From our perspective on Earth, it just looks like a round ball of fire. Who could have known 3,000 years ago to write such a thing in a book unless it was written from the Creator? How can somebody, again, if I'm making a book, I'm not going to write stuff that can one day be disproven. I'm not going to take a risk writing about scientific realities that maybe one day could find out, right? Right? The idea is what? That whoever wrote the Torah, if it was made from human beings, how can human beings know 3,000 years ago that the sun had orbs, sun had layers, right? We only know that today because of science. Again, another proof pointing to the divinity, the idea that the Torah is from God. Okay? Let's do one more proof and finish in like 5 minutes. Okay. The scientific discoveries of the Zohar. This is a proof from the again, another I'm bringing the book here is bringing a lot of proofs from different areas of the oral Torah. Okay? So I'm going to bring right here. I think we have enough time. Okay, let's do this. So the scientific discoveries of the Zohar. Okay, this, which is oral Torah. This proof consists of many different things said by the Zohar, page 3, I think chapter 3, page 10a, and an ancient Jewish text of the oral law, which is written about 2,000 years ago. Again, it was written 2,000 years ago, but the information was given 3,300 years ago. God gave to Moses, but it was only written 2,000 years ago because the oral Torah was about to be lost, like we said before in previous classes. Okay, now proof number. Let's go to A. Okay, there's A, B, C, D. Okay, so people have always wondered about the shape of the Earth. Is it flat? Is it round? Does it have different shapes? No one was sure. Well, the author of the Zohar explained that the tradition that was passed down to Moses from God at Mount Sinai, that the entire world is round like a ball and spins around like a ball. Additionally, the prophet Isaiah tells us over 2,600 years ago that the earth is round, as the verse says in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth and whose inhabitants are like grasshoppers. These two major statements were contrary to what most people thought what most people in ancient society thought. Again, you go ask people 2,000, 3,000 years ago, right? 3,300 years ago and 2,600 years ago. Guys, how many, what is the earth? Is it flat? Is it round? Is this? The Torah said with full confidence, it's round. And not only is it round, it revolves. It's like a ball. It spins like a ball. Okay. B. Additionally, the Zohar also writes, you should know that once there is darkness on one side of the ball, the earth, right, there is light on the other side. This means that the Zohar, the oral Torah, knew the relationship between the earth and the sun. Okay. So again, who can know that? You're living on Earth. You don't have, and we only know that one side of the Earth is light and one side is darkness because we could go to space and we could see from space that idea. But how did somebody know this thousands of years ago? C. The Zohar continues to say that there are people on top of the ball and there are people on the bottom. What do we learn from here? We see from here that the Zohar points to an understanding of the force of gravity. What makes this more exciting is that this statement was written 1,700 years before Isaac Newton even discovered the concept of gravity, about 1687 CE. Okay? And D. Furthermore, the Zohar claims something truly mind-boggling. There is the Zohar says, I'm quoting the words, there is a place on earth where there is always light, while there's only a short period of darkness. End of quote. The Zohar is referring to the North Pole, which has short seasons of darkness and the seasons that are mostly day. So it's mostly day, very, very little periods of night. Now remember that the first time in recorded history that a person arrived at the North Pole was 1909, only about 100 years ago. How did the Holy Zohar, which is the oral Torah, which the Jews, the Torah of the Jews, make this claim about 2,000 years ago, 1,900 years before a single person stepped on the North Pole? It was truly impossible. It was truly impossible to make such an accurate claim so long ago. It was truly impossible to make such an accurate claim so long ago, especially when he lived in Israel, which is thousands of miles away from the North Pole. It is only fair to say that all this information leaves us with no doubt that a person was unable to write the Torah, and the only one who created the world, and only the one who created the world and thus knows everything about it was able to share such information. The Jews never claimed that they discovered this information on their own or that they were great scientists. They admitted that this is all what they had received on Mount Sinai from God. We were given this information and it was just transferred generation from generation. So let's finish off with this, just to summarize what we said. So we brought a bunch of proofs from the Torah that shows you that there's no way a human being could have ever written the Torah, and it could only have been given from the creator of the universe. Right? Because who could have known this? Who could have known thousands of years ago, the number of stars, the renewal of the moon, whether the sun has layers, whether the earth is round, and the concept of gravity, the idea of the North Pole. No one traveled to the North. How do they know that, right? So many crazy ideas, the idea of the relationship between the sun and the earth, everything. This information is what we call divine information, proving to what? The indisputable truth of the Torah. So let's end up here. Thank you for listening.